So yesterday I got to get. Why are you laughing? What's funny? Family news?
No, I'm just laughing at the fact that
bubbly.
I just think it's funny that you start every episode immediately when you hit record because I know that you're trying to prevent me from starting.
No, that's not really the case.
Yeah,
just trying to keep things on track here.
I think so.
So yesterday I got together with my good buddy and friend Carl Bragg, who I have performed music with in a little band called Separator, which you can find on the Sight and Sound YouTube page. Anyways, I had full expectation to hang out with him. He came over. He didn't even bring any of his musical equipment because we were just going to hang out. We weren't going to work on music. We're probably going to podcast. So I was going to do an after party with him. Went to grab my microphone and realized that you had it. And in my mind, and I said, fucking Snelling. You were trying to prevent me from recording a podcast without you, weren't you?
Yeah, that's exactly what my plan was the entire time. What I thought was funnier was that you had to text me, "Hey, do you still have my mic?" As if I took it somewhere else or I lost it, like I'd gone anywhere with it. Like, yeah, it's just sitting right here.
Well, because of my CTE, I commonly misplace things and have trouble finding them, and I thought I maybe just couldn't find it.
Yeah, after we recorded, I think last week's weekly, I kept this mic because it helps with the echo in my room, but it also it helps to hold a mic sometimes. Yeah. I can't hold the mic that I have right now. So,
have you been using it? You've been on a lot of you've been doing your media tour lately. You've been on a lot of podcasts lately.
Yeah, I have 2 guest spots. I think all in the same month, and I other than that, I don't think I've done any guest spots this year.
I didn't promote it.
Oh yes, I have. I've done Wiley's show.
I didn't promote it because I did this podcast and then it came out weeks later. But I was on Track Show, one of my favorite music podcasts, with some guys over in England. Make sure to check that out if you're interested in music podcasts. But they actually we podcasted for so long that they ended up cutting it into 2 episodes. And big shout out to those guys. They're doing something really cool. Last year, when they started their podcast, they went to this music festival and they podcasted after their experience. This music festival actually reached out to them and wanted them to do interviews with bands. Yeah, so
like the next year or whatever?
This year, they're doing it right now.
That's sick.
Yeah, so they're interviewing people. Actually, one of them, Harry, who is one of the hosts of the podcast. When I was on, I told them about this artist called The Japanese House, and he sent me a DM on Instagram watching that band and being like, "This is because of you. Like, you turned us on to this band, and we're watching them now." It was awesome. It was a really good episode.
He made fun of me for liking Yumi at 6.
He did make fun of you, and catching a rare British friend in the tall grass while going through Viridian City is one of my favorite. The entire time I've been playing the Pokemon game of life, I've been trying to capture as many rare British friends as I possibly could.
Talking about guesting on other shows, right before I came here, I was a guest on Confirmed Epic podcast with Brad, and we reviewed Brad Bell.
What a great name. That's a great name.
Together, we are Snell Bell.
Oh, okay.
So we reviewed Alien Covenant, and that was nice. Like at the start of the podcast, he asked me about. I don't remember how it came up, but basically, I told him that I don't get to review movies as often. But this is actually going to lead into another announcement, by the way. Our last movies episode was when Logan came out, so it's been like 2 months since Sight and Sound's put out any podcast movie related. But
not really on the YouTube channel much either.
Yeah, I know.
You're a little self-conscious about your new room, aren't you?
A little bit.
Took me forever to figure out where to film.
A little self-conscious about my room, but just my setup in general. Yeah, and my room is still a mess. I've made like 0 progress cleaning it up. But anyway, I was a guest and reviewed Alien Covenant with him. It was nice to go to a theater and review a film. It was like old times, so that was great. Definitely check that out. By the time Sight and Sound is up, our episode should be out together as well. We got to talk about a couple other things. Like Prometheus. We had an interesting Prometheus conversation. I'm trying to persuade him to continue watching The Leftovers. So that was really cool. So thanks, Brad, again, for having me on. You can check out Confirmed Epic Podcast. Speaking of movie-related content on Sight and Sound, tomorrow, I believe tomorrow, or Tuesday, regardless, I will be recording with Schmo Mark Ellis, and he has given me his movie bucket list. And this is sort of the official announcement. Movie episodes are coming, and they're going to, hopefully, I'm going to ask some of our Collider crew, our friends over there at Collider, our film review fans, to come on and give me some of their movie bucket list. Basically, their own list. What am I saying?
You said buck list.
No, I said bucket list.
Okay. I think you said it fast.
So they're going to come on, and it's based on their own criteria. I'm just telling them, hey, give me a list of movies that you think every film fan should see. So it's going to have their own personal flavor as well. And I'm going to talk to them about that. I don't know when that episode will be released because I'm going to store a few of them before I actually start to release them. That way I always have one in the bank instead of waiting for another schedule to clear up and getting those guests. So anyway, I'm really excited to have more movie-related content, and I'm more excited, and hopefully everyone else is excited, that it will be with some of our Collider favorites.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've been waiting for this day. I do have to ask this question. Well, but actually, before I ask it, the way this... People are new. People might be new to Sight and Sound, or they might not have been with us since the beginning. The way this works is that you used to always want a podcast with me. I used to tell you all the time I could never podcast with you. I still believe that.
Still right.
I can never podcast with you. I can podcast alongside you.
Makes no sense.
The way this works is, Sight and Sound Weekly is our bread and butter, but I'm sort of the head of development for music content. You're head of development for movie content. We clash heads on television. I've been waiting.
What?
I've been waiting since.
No, we don't.
I've been waiting since day one for Sight and Sound Movies, the weekly podcast. Is this going to be a podcast that's going to come out every single week?
No, not necessarily. Maybe bi-weekly.
Okay.
It's not going to be every week.
Well, if for some reason you can't get a guest, your bank of episodes run out, will we ever get to see you do a solo podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I'll do a solo podcast if movie news comes out that warrants it. But like I said, I've made friends with Brad Bell, Snell Bell, and I'm going to reach out to some other guys that I used to podcast with on Film Beef, like Michael Denniston of War Machine vs. Warhorse. It's just always really hard to have film critics on as guests of a movie podcast when they've already had that type of discussion on their own show. So I was trying to figure out, the wait was me trying to figure out how to get these people involved, but not just reviewing a film. So that was where the struggle came in, but I think I've solved it. But yeah, that should be bi-weekly and whatever. I mean, I might, if big news breaks, I might do like a solo podcast on something.
As a fan of Ryan Snelling talking about movies, so I'm gonna say what a fan would want from you. I want the Ryan Snelling's take on a more broad spectrum of movie stuff. I can go so many places to hear about movie reviews, as you've already said, but I want to hear you talk about like some hot topics regarding movies. Like, is our cinemas dying?
Is our cinemas
dying?
Sounds like a JTE show.
Exactly. I want to hear your take, just you, not me interrupting you, not the dogs barking in the background, talking about
sounds like a better show.
Our superhero films. Are there too many superhero films and stuff like that? Just those hot topics that people really want to hear about. That's what I want to hear.
Okay.
I want to hear your version of Sight and Sound music.
I have to be inspired for that kind of conversation.
Yeah.
And I also can have those conversations better with someone else.
That's what you think.
So therein lies the problem.
That's what you think. I'm supporting you here.
Like if someone asked me, hey, what do you think about, what's your philosophy on what makes a good movie? I would respond, but it's hard for me to I don't know.
You just need somebody. You just need somebody in the background to go, yeah.
I just need
talking.
Cody. Let's get Cody. He could just kind of sit there and I'll talk to him and he'll nod and shake his head. But I did want to say that
I don't know anybody named Cody. Not anymore.
I did want to say that Brad, did he say wife or girlfriend? His life partner is a huge music buff, and he doesn't particularly care for music, but he made sure to tell me to tell you hi, and that his life partner listens to Sight and Sound music.
What's good, Brad? Hope you're enjoying the show. Hope your
Brad's life partner.
Hope your life partner, maybe a man, maybe a woman, I don't know.
It's a woman. I just can't remember if he said wife or
lady friend. That's how we say it. Lady friend. Hope she enjoys the show. Speaking of which, had a full-on topic for Sight and Sound Music picked out this week, was going into it head first and excited to get it done. Woke up Thursday morning to the news of Chris Cornell passing away, an untimely passing at a young age. I think early 50s was the actual age. Definitely bummed out by that one. We lost a lot of people last year in 2016, of course, for sure, and that's unfortunate. But this one definitely hit home a little bit more for me just because I grew up in the 90s, grew up maybe not listening to Soundgarden as much as other acts, but just I knew what he meant to that genre of music. I did a whole remembrance thing on the second half of Sight and Sound Music if you want to check that out, but I haven't really gotten your take on it at all. Is there anything that you wanted to say?
I don't have much to say. I'm more fascinated by the historical aspects of it just because I didn't grow up a fan of his. I mean, I listened to Audio Slave some, but I understand his importance, absolutely, and everybody's throwing out that stat, like how many people are left when it comes to the grunge era.
Yeah,
of rock.
That's an interesting side of the discussion.
Yeah, there's not many left. It's just I
think on the surface there's not many left, but in grunge specifically, maybe not, because that era, and I talked about it in my music episode, that era of music was so much about the front man. I mean, you have Chris Cornell, Eddie Vedder, Kurt Cobain, of course. I mean, so many individuals.
And Eddie Vedder being the only one left, right?
Yeah, pretty much of the big names.
Of the big.
And I said this. Yeah. I said this to my friend. I was talking about it. Eddie Vedder, Pearl Jam might be one of my all-time favorite bands, period.
David Letterman loves him.
I mean, now he's a good-looking guy, and now he's
recently inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Now he sort of he's got the dad bod going on, looks like some dude just hanging out at a gas station. But let me just say this. Eddie Vedder, Pearl Jam Unplugged. I'm not gay, but I might suck that man's dick. I'm just saying. There are two people in this world that I have, just a massive, massive man crush for. Young Eddie Vedder is one. When you see him perform Black at that age, wearing that leather jacket, and that backwards black baseball cap, And number two is young Harrison Ford. Also,
Alden Ehrenreich?
No. Young Harrison Ford.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Just a sexy man.
You like him?
I will take all of that you've got and more. Anyways, rest in peace, Chris Cornell.
The other thing that I took away from it is how do you raise children in a world where icons are committing suicide?
That's a good question.
Isn't that just... This is a huge idea. It's a huge topic to tackle, I know, but that's sort of what I took away from it. It's like, how do you live in a world where even your icons, where your quote-unquote your gods, take their own lives?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question. I think it's a much bigger question we could probably tackle on like an after party or something, but we just live in a very, very strange time in general, not just because of the media that we take in. I think that has a huge role to play in it. Just mass media in general, what we're exposed to as individuals. But everything, the food we eat, the drugs that we're raised on, I think all that plays into the landscape of people right now and how they interact with certain daily lives and situations. But how do you raise your kids to deal with stuff like that?
Well, maybe like if we had kids, they wouldn't be affected by Chris Cornell's passing. So a better example, as silly as it sounds.
I remember when Kurt Cobain passed away, and the discussion had more, I think, to do with drugs, strangely enough. And I just remember it feeling like when I was a kid, like it was just a very, very dark thing.
Yeah.
Super, super dark. And it is a very, very dark thing. But as a kid, even thinking about that time, that year of 1994, in general, that's what I think about. I think about Kurt Cobain committing suicide.
Really?
And it's just...
You were like, what, 7?
I don't know. I can't remember.
If it was 94, you were 7-ish.
Yeah, that's right, because I was born in 87.
There you go.
Anyways, yeah, rest in peace, Chris Cornell, a rock god that meant so much to people. Again, if you want to hear more about that, go check out Sight and Sound Music. Let's get into our first topic of the day, which is...
Let's do it. I want to talk about the Star Trek Discovery trailer. We talked about last week, maybe, that we were huge, or I'm a huge J.J. Abrams Star Trek fan.
Yes.
I'm with Kelvin, essentially. A lot of people aren't. I was not raised as a Star Trek fan, so I am able to I'm able to get excited by this Kelvin timeline. And it was very interesting to me when they announced that they were going to do another Star Trek TV show. And I got very excited because I thought, hey, maybe this is finally my chance to get involved, have my own Star Trek TV series, if you will. And there was some behind-the-scenes stuff that was kind of like, I don't know really how to take this. The first being that it's going to be distributed on CBS All Access, which you and I don't really give two shits about any network television shows. I know you're happy about Timeless coming back for another season.
Absolutely.
I mean, we could talk about CBS for a while.
Well, if you're going to launch something like this, if you're going to launch a platform like this, I mean, it exists, I'm assuming, right? Does it exist yet? CBS All Access?
I think so.
Okay.
A version of it. I don't think it's ventured into original content yet. Okay. I think it's still just a paid service that has.
If you're gonna push this is a good property to sort of have.
It is,
push it, yeah.
But we could talk about like asking people to subscribe to this for a brand new show, which, I get it. I mean, they're trying to follow a Netflix model, but at the same time, so much of CBS's existing audience, I mean, it's 60-year-old people. So I don't know if they're going to pick up CBS. So
when we say the casual audience for TV fans, we pretty much are talking a lot about CBS.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most watched network, but also just their demographic, the age range of people who watch that is a much older audience. So anyway, that's one behind-the-scenes thing that was kind of iffy. And then, of course, showrunner Brian Fuller, who was originally attached, recently departed. So a lot of people hold Brian Fuller in high regard. He's actually working on American Gods right now. I believe he came from Hannibal. So that was originally pretty exciting to see that he was going to tackle that show. And then, I don't know. I didn't lose hope because I didn't know what to expect in general, but I know that a lot of people didn't like it, and I know that kind of freaked everybody out. So
I feel like so much that's sort of been behind the scenes of this show has been going against this show. Like, I feel like the more stuff came out about it and the longer time went on, people's interest in it sort of dropped off. Now, that's coming from somebody who's not a Star Trek fan, but I think for some of the new people that jumped on board to Star Trek with the J.J. Abrams films, with the films that have come out recently, I feel like the fire that they had, the interest level, the heat meter has just been cooling off and cooling off and cooling off ever since I think maybe J.J. Abrams departed the Star Trek series.
See, maybe. I think the interest meter, as far as the movies go.
I mean, the heat meter.
The heat meter, sorry.
Trademarked by Sight and Sound.
Yes. I think the heat meter went away just because so many people were mad about how Star Trek Into Darkness was handled, which I don't understand. But in Star Trek Beyond, the third movie, the box office returns are still lower, even though I think it was a successful film overall. I still think they should make a fourth movie. But anyway, I think that the jets have cooled a little bit since that first movie, absolutely. And as far as the TV series go, my own personal interest continues to kind of lower as time goes on. So, I mean, before we talk about the actual trailer, did you have any other thoughts as far as your take on your first impressions of this series?
Yeah, I think, just in general, I've never been interested in Star Trek. It always seemed like something that should interest me as a kid, just being a fan of science fiction and fantastical things like this, comic books and all of that. But I just never got into it. Every time I watched it, it seemed a little boring to me. Obviously, I was, Star Trek, the one with Professor X in it. That was the one.
Next Generation.
Patrick Stewart. Yeah, that one was the one that I sort of grew up with. And I don't know. I just never cared about it. But when the J.J. Abrams films came out, man, they absolutely blew me away. I mean, I was on board, and I talked to so many people that were surprised by that film and the second film. I talked to a lot of people that really enjoyed that movie. I don't know what the general consensus of it was, but strangely enough, and I have nothing to back this up, haven't looked into this. This was sort of my own perception. But as soon as Star Wars came out and the announcement of it came out, it seemed like everybody that had jumped back on board to Star Trek sort of just fell off. Like when the third film came out, nobody, at least in the general population, I felt like nobody gave a shit about it.
Which is crazy because Guardians of the Galaxy is bigger than ever.
Yeah.
And it's kind of this, it's the same genre. So when you talk about the rising tide, for some reason it's not really factoring into Star Trek's success.
It seemed
which
like
is weird.
It seemed like the time between those films was long. I mean, to me, I don't know the actual years apart, the numbers, but it seemed like those movies were farther apart from one another than what we've come to expect from other big franchises.
I think it's been like 4 years apart for each.
Yeah.
It was like 2009 to 2013, I think.
And for most big franchises, the modern state that we're in with film, and I know we're in TV right now, but with film, it's so prolific right now. Marvel stuff comes out, I mean, multiple movies a year. Now we're getting a Star Wars film every single year. DC even doing the exact same thing, not to mention the crossover to television. I feel like because of the distance between those movies might have had something to do with it. If it would have been more in the zeitgeist.
But the distance between the first two was longer than the second and third one.
Yeah.
But that was where the more significant loss was,
the drop off
between 2 and 3. But anyway, I agree. I think since Star Wars, I mean, there's no competition.
Yeah.
But
people are going to be pissed at us saying that.
That's a great point. I agree. You're right. I think the show, my perspective of the original series was always just kind of boring. I just couldn't get into it. It wasn't my thing. I didn't care. But that's why
a lot of talking.
We've talked a lot about on this show. We talked a lot about like fan expectations and going in, or at least I have. The Star Trek as an entity is my prime example because I look at those movies and see great movies. The Kelvin timeline, I see great movies. And then when I hear Star Trek fans hating those movies because of the direction it takes, it makes me happy that I'm not a Star Trek fan in the traditional sense. And that was sort of my take going into Alien as well. Like I thought, same with Prometheus, you can kind of have the same type of conversation because so many people hate that movie. That were originally fans of Alien. So anyway,
before we get into the actual what we thought about this trailer, can I pitch you on what I would have loved this show to be?
Is this a Twitter poll, Jay?
Maybe it could be. I wish this show was directed by Peter Berg, and I wish it starred Kyle Chandler and Taylor Kitsch, and maybe later on it had Michael B. Jordan in it. How great would a Star Trek TV show be if it was done the exact same way as Friday Night Lights?
You want to see a high school version of Star Trek?
Yes, that would be great. An Academy style, have the music inspired by explosions in the sky, all that atmospheric guitar playing.
I can get on board with that, especially because
that's
the one thing that we haven't really seen in Star Trek is actually them being in Starfleet in San Francisco. So like I wouldn't want like a high school drama type take.
Yeah.
But Starfleet Academy would be pretty cool.
But Peter Berg to do that.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. I'm not going to lie.
I'm smiling here to hear
Good
right
call.
Now. Anyways, all right, let's talk about this trailer. What did you think about this shit? Not that it should. What did you think about it?
I didn't care for it.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't care for the trailer.
Yeah.
I thought every character in the trailer seemed to be made of stone. I thought it was,
including the guy that looked like he was legitimately.
I mean, that's
stone.
fine. That's fine if it's like part of the character, part of the alien, and we'll figure that out as the series comes out. But I thought overall the trailer was just incredibly bland,
stoic,
boring. I didn't see like any action. I mean, we saw close-ups of Klingons.
Definitely didn't see action.
We saw the ship floating around. But overall, I just did not care for the trailer. In fact, I actually think it makes the show look bad.
Interesting. Here's the thing. I thought the acting was kind of rough in this trailer, but I actually thought this was pretty fucking dope.
Really?
I was really surprised by this. I thought the visual aesthetic looked great. I thought the shots looked incredible. I thought it looked like what J.J. Abrams established in that first movie. I mean, things were legitimately ripped straight from the film. We talked about it. We were counting the shots that look like a J.J. shot.
The tilted shots of floating through the halls of the Enterprise. Well, it's the Discovery in this case, not the Enterprise. But yeah.
Now, I've been tricked. I've been tricked by trailers before. Hashtag tricked by trailers. But for instance,
podcast name, call
it. That's a great podcast. We might have a new Sight and Sound movie podcast where we just talk about trailers that looked great. He's excited about this idea.
We're starting a new podcast.
Rest in peace, Sight and Sound. Anyway, so
if anybody takes our idea, we're suing you.
So, yeah, I haven't seen the show, but if you watch the Legends of Tomorrow trailer, you are thinking to yourself, fuck BVS, fuck everything that's going on. This needs to be the movie we need to be seeing right now. I mean, it looks awesome. It looks better. It makes the Marvel Netflix series look like it was shot on PB fucking S. I mean, it looks dope. And this trailer reminds me of that. It looks really cool. Now, the acting reminds me of Sci-Fi Channel acting. And I mean, I was waiting for some sort of action scene. I wanted somebody to be like jumping up with a spear and throwing it or something like that. I mean, Peter Berg, where are you, brother?
I saw one article. Actually, my first impression before I saw the trailer, I saw an article response to the trailer that said, this just looks like Star Wars. And I
thought the practical effects on whatever that Bugman was looked cool.
I totally disagree. It doesn't look like Star Wars. It does look like Star Trek.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make fun of them being on a desert planet. Or
do you disagree with my comment about the practical effects or the statement about Star Wars?
I'm totally fine with everything that you said about the visuals. I didn't have a problem with the visuals. I don't think it looks cheap by any means. I mean, it looks as good as it can be for television. It's not like Game of Thrones level, but I don't have a problem with it by any means. The J.J. Abrams stuff, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it does look like that, but that's a good thing for me. Like I said, how we preface the conversation.
Well,
so
the interesting part of this is going to be legitimately the reverse of everything we've talked about with these more high concept style television, like the Marvel shows, the DC shows. I mean, even Legion to a certain extent. Those shows, for the most part, deliver on story, but it's always the visuals that take you out of it, like whether it's the action in Marvel or some of the cheesy, them throwing electricity. We even talked about in Legion that some things looked a little wacky, like in a movie where you would have millions of dollars of CGI.
Physics of people being thrown around. Yeah.
Now, if we flip that over and we replace great visuals with very mediocre CBS level storylines and acting, what's the balance there? We need them both to be good to be a great show.
Yes. And unfortunately, I just don't. I'm fine with the visual aspect of it, but I wasn't intrigued by the characters or the acting. You're absolutely right. Yeah. And just all the shots of the dialogue, like you said, it's stoic. It's not at all what I wanted to. When I was already kind of like, okay, let's just see what this is about. It doesn't. The heat meter is not raised by any means. I'm still gonna watch it, at least the first episode, because Star Trek it is by nature more of a procedural show.
Yes.
And so I'm assuming that's the case unless they've come out and said otherwise. I know the season will be shorter. They're limited episodes. But yeah, man, I'm going to give the trailer a shot, but I don't have a reason to really get into it, I don't think.
This has been a fantastic sort of preview of our new podcast, Trick by Trailers. And I'm very excited. In fact, we're probably going to take a break here in a minute and plan out the show. But before we go to break, I want to ask you this question because I'm having trouble remembering. Do you remember the Nickelodeon space TV show? Did it have
Case?
No,
Space Cases?
I don't think so. Did it have Ben Foster in it where they were like crash landed on a planet? What was that show
I remember
called?
Space Cases.
What is Space Cases? I'm going to look this up.
That had the Black Ranger from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in it.
Okay.
That's all I can remember.
Is this the show I'm thinking about? Yes, this is the show I'm thinking about.
Space Cases?
Yeah. Nah, maybe it's not. Yes, this is the show I'm thinking about. Was Ben Foster in the show? I don't think he was. What show am I thinking about?
I don't know. You want me to look up Ben Foster's IMDb?
No, you don't have to do that. Do you have anything else before we go to break?
I don't think so.
Okay, what were our Twitter polls?
We only had one Twitter poll. You can follow the Twitter poll at SightSoundPod. It's just simply, did you think the Star Trek Discovery trailer was good? Do you have enough? Oh, how about this? You mentioned this off air. Will you subscribe to CBS All Access just to watch Star Trek Discovery?
That's a whole other conversation in and of itself. Just to throw it in there, I'm not a big fan of these random competing companies coming up. That's an issue that I've talked about before with music. Is I think it's good that they challenge one another to where one service comes up to challenge the other service and they sort of compete to see to make each other better. That's like the beauty of capitalism in that regard. But
you love capitalism.
I do.
You?
I'm a big fan of, that's a after party discussion, but I don't like when they're just straight up copycats of one another and they're not bringing anything new to the table, because then you're just making it very difficult for people. You're making people choose between one or the other just based on content exclusivity. Not a fan of it.
Okay.
Disney XD. All right.
Again, follow the Twitter poll at SightSoundPod. Will you subscribe to CBS All Access just to watch Star Trek Discovery?
Freddie Prinze Jr. should be ashamed of himself. We'll be right back. We love cramming your ear holes with sight and sound goodness, but now we want to be all over your body. Wait, before you file a police report, we want you to wear our t-shirts. Head on over to sightsoundpod.com and pick up your sight and sound gear today. Every month we are releasing exclusive and limited designs, so if you see something you really want, make sure to pick it up before it goes away forever. Oh yeah, and the best part? Every time you buy a Sight and Sound shirt, you can go to bed at night feeling like a better person because you are doing your part to not only support this show, but make it better in the future. We have a ton of ideas to make Sight and Sound better for you, like doing a video version of Sight and Sound Weekly. Every time you buy a t-shirt, you are supporting us and helping make that dream a reality. Again, head on over to sightsoundpod.com and pick up your Sight and Sound gear today.
Do I get to start another segment?
I'll allow it.
I do. Well, let me start then by talking about the Orville trailer.
A TV show trailer.
We just finished watching talking about a Star Trek Discovery, and then it reminded me of the Seth MacFarlane show, The Orville, which is obviously a Star Trek parody. And I think me and you are higher on that show than we are.
Oh, 100%. Seth MacFarlane's a fucking genius, first of all. And
I think he's hit or miss.
Look, he's a funny guy.
He is a funny guy.
Yeah. And yeah, he's a funny guy.
Okay.
Jon Favreau
directed this, yes.
I think it looks good too.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Maybe not past the first episode, but
I think when you're a comedy, you can get away with more like some of the aliens look absolutely ridiculous. When you're a comedy, you can get away with that.
I actually think the aliens look just as good as Discovery's aliens.
Maybe that's why Guardians of the Galaxy got away with so much.
You haven't seen the film. You have no idea. Anyway, let's
I've
talk
seen
about
the first
movies.
one.
Let's talk about movies. We got some news. Hot off the
We
press.
did.
Yesterday, I was at work and wasn't able to follow this the same way you were, but you texted me.
Didn't really follow it, just saw the story.
Whatever. You didn't follow it as it developed, Jay? It
No.
wasn't a ticker on the news station?
Luke Jaggers, let me know, which he's probably my number one source for movie news, for breaking movie news.
He, I don't know. Anyway, the news was you texted me that Tom Hardy was Venom, and I'm just kind of wondering what?
Yeah.
'Cause I didn't, not because I didn't like that. I just didn't know what you were talking about because I wasn't following it and didn't realize that was made official as of yesterday. So we talked a little bit about the Venom project, I think.
Well,
at some point on here.
we talked a little bit about Sony doing their own
The
Spider-Man thing post MCU Spider-Man.
So I talked a little bit about this on Brad's show before, but I want your take first on this. So we hear that Tom Hardy is now Venom. Ruben Fleischer, who previously directed 30 Minutes or Less, Zombieland, Gangster Squad, is set to direct for Sony. Tom Hardy is playing Eddie Brock's Venom. What's your take on all this?
I think it's interesting. I think because we're seemingly following so much movie news, not that it wasn't like this before, but because of these big franchises, we're following a lot. Franchise. Franchise. I think we're following a lot of it behind the scenes stuff leading up. Speculation is a big business here in the movie industry, as it's been for a long time, but I feel like there's more at stake just with these big franchises and franchisees and these studios throwing so much money into it. The whole aspect of the Sony Marvel relationship is what it is. People are going to want to make money, and
it's just the thing.
We're not going to be able to get around that. When I heard the news of a standalone Venom film being developed, a lot of the talk was, oh, we don't want this to happen. It's going to confuse people. How can you do a Venom movie without Spider-Man? And there's really, you know what? With Fox doing their X-Men thing and kind of just doing whatever they want, I actually don't really mind it that much. If it's not Spider-Man, I don't have a problem with it. And there's nothing saying that they have to follow exactly what's going on with these movies. And Venom, there aren't a lot of characters in the comic book universe that aren't main characters that you could say, yeah, they can stand on their own as a character, lead their own story, and all of this. This reminds me a lot of what DC is doing to sort of pivot in a different direction with their universe. Their statement of intent has been, okay, we get it. You guys aren't a huge fan of our movies, and we're going to shift gears. And the news stuff that's been coming out with them are they're getting huge A-list directors attached to their projects. And now it seems like Sony might be making that move with actors, because if you would have ever said, hey, Tom Hardy is going to be he's been in a comic book film previously, obviously, as Bane, and that's a Christopher Nolan project. That's a whole other thing. But to be the lead as Venom, I would have never been able to guess that in a million years. Because this isn't, to me, even though I don't mind them making this movie, it's not really like top billing.
Did you think that Tom Hardy was better than a superhero film? Is that what you're getting at?
No, I think he's better than
Dark Knight Rises aside, of course.
I think he's better than like a B level comic book franchise film.
In Venom, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's my take on it. I like, the more I think about it, the more I'm coming around to the idea of them doing a Venom Standalone. I almost combined those words. A Venom Standalone movie, just because it's in tradition with how comic books are made. And Venom might come in and out of a Spider-Man movie, but he also has his own storyline, his own comic books. I'm on board with that. The difference is comic books are still made by Marvel, whereas this is two different studios, and I think that's where people take issue. My personal take is that I don't trust Sony as a studio. I just don't like them. Like, if someone was to ask me, who's your favorite movie studio? Who's your least favorite movie studio? It'd kind of be hard to gauge because every studio has hit or misses. But I have an answer for my least favorite, which is Sony, because I think movie after movie, they consistently fail and flop. Talk about Ghostbusters. It doesn't even have to be about Spider-Man films. I just generally don't like movies that Sony makes. And the difference in X-Men, Fox is one of my favorite superhero or favorite movie studios, especially when you talk about genre stuff. Alien Covenant just came out. They produced Star Wars, all the X-Men films. I mean, Kingsman. I mean, Fox is a good studio. So that's the difference. That's the Sony part of it. The idea of coming up with that movie is fine with me. I just don't have confidence in the studio. Necessarily. Ruben Fleischer is probably my least favorite part about it. I am actually a fan of 30 minutes or less. I'm not saying it's a great movie. It's a just kind of a fun movie to have on. I would never like debate that someone should watch it. It's not that big of a deal, but it's sad to say that that is my favorite Ruben Fleischer movie. A lot of people love Zombieland.
I love Zombieland.
I watched it, I saw it, but it didn't stay in my consciousness. I probably need to rewatch it.
I love that movie. Absolutely love it. In fact, the year it came out, one of my favorite films of the year.
So I need to rewatch it then.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of people. All I'm saying is I don't remember enough about it. I'm not saying I remember it being bad. But
that was like one of the first years where I really dropped off in my movie watching. Like, just kind of stopped watching movies a lot. But I do remember saying that year to people, Zombieland might be my favorite movie this year.
Really?
The year it came out. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I definitely need to rewatch it then. I might do that later today.
Let me ask you this question about about Tom Hardy in this role. Just him being in this movie alone makes me interested. Probably one of my favorite actors around today, just because of what when he's on screen, he commands a presence. There's no doubt about that. Now, him being in a superhero movie directed by the guy that did Zombieland, which had the very, it was comedy. It was a comedy film. I don't really see those two things coming together very well. In fact, my idea of humor and Tom Hardy, the most funny thing that I can think of him doing, just in my own mind, and I haven't seen every single thing he's done, is probably his little quips in Inception.
Well, Bronson also has sort of a
right, but it's more of a smarter humor. You know what I'm saying?
But I don't think the tone of this film is going to be light.
I don't either. It's supposed to be a rated R. They're saying maybe like have a horror element, which actually
I dig.
I can get on board with that. Absolutely. Like maybe an alien style Venom lurking through the shadows sort of vibe.
I'm going to say this. Tom Hardy's kind of annoying me lately.
Okay. Why is that?
Because
because he talks like that.
It's the grunting, and it's just being inaudible. Tom Hardy is inaudible as an actor for the most part. That's the best I've heard Tom Hardy is through the Bane mask recently. I'm serious. It's just he is a great actor.
What about when he talks like this, love, in Inception?
Inception is fine.
You have to dream bigger.
Warrior is a film, and I've said it to a lot of people.
Never seen it.
Some of the best acting I have ever seen in my life came out of that film from everyone.
Can we do a never before seen with that?
Brian Callen's in it.
I know. He plays Joe Rogan.
Anyway, Warrior, he's great in Warrior as well, but even on that film, he's teetering on grunting and being inaudible. But it's starting to get annoying to me. And Taboo. Same thing with Taboo, the FX series. I don't know.
Never seen it.
I'm hoping that a Sony Spider-Man film, a director like Ruben Fleischer, dealing with people that are, larger than life, like Woody Harrelson and
Jesse
Eisenberg, and people that are more vocal, a little more comedic. I'm hoping that
intelligible, you could understand what they're saying.
I'm hoping that we see a new side of Tom Hardy. But so I have that worry, but hopefully it gives us a Tom Hardy that we've never seen before.
Well, Venom in general in the comic books has a super interesting story. Like probably one of my favorite storylines, the alien symbiote goo, and Kevin Marks probably have more to talk about with this, but just his whole trajectory has always been super interesting. Him, obviously, not him, it being with Peter Parker on his body, very interesting. Taking Eddie Brock as a host, so to speak, the whole thing with Carnage and Anti-Venom, and then you have the whole Matt Gargan thing. You know about that? Matt Gargan was Scorpion and took on the symbiote suit at one point.
Oh, okay, I didn't know.
And I believe somebody was telling me, I think it was my buddy Carl, was telling me that there was one storyline where the symbiote was in like a military project, which I think could be really cool. I don't know. Kevin Marks is going to have a field day with this whole thing, but I like it. I like it. The more I think about it, the more I like this. A lot of the commentary is, well, how is it going to play into the Spider-Man? It doesn't have to play into Spider-Man. It really doesn't have to. We've seen it now with Fox.
That just comes from the debauchery that was Spider-Man 3.
Right.
People are just longing for that connection. And I can understand, like, you hear the hopes that Spider-Man is going back to Marvel. You have this great Spider-Man Homecoming trailer. People are excited about Spider-Man again. So when they make that kind of announcement, especially from Sony, they just kind of feel betrayed.
Yeah.
I get it, because I didn't like Spider-Man 3 either, but that doesn't mean it can't be a good movie.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're in an age of where things are being rebooted faster than we know what to do with, and I have no problem with the story. I'm excited to see what comes of it. Look, it's early. It's pretty early with all of these announcements. We could get a year from now and Tom Hardy could drop off. You know, I mean, look at Ben Affleck. He's not going to be Batman anymore. Oh, wait. No, he's still Batman as of right now. But regardless.
You can follow the Twitter poll at SightSoundPod. Is anyone else annoyed with Tom Hardy's grunting and totally being inaudible?
Asked you to maybe do some sort of game with this. I didn't know that a director had been attacked. Actually, after you told me, I remembered that a director was announced. But you know what movie I would love to see Venom with Tom Hardy in? I would love to see a movie directed by Alfonso Cuarón, written by Sam Esmail, a Venom film.
Sam Esmail doesn't believe in plot.
Regardless, he also doesn't believe on people being framed in the center of shots, but neither do I, for that matter.
Rule of thirds.
I just think I would like to see a more intellectual type of Venom movie. If it's going to be dark, it's going to be rated R, especially with Tom Hardy. I would love to see something that was a little bit more cerebral, because the symbiote in general, obviously Venom is like a hulking character, a very brute force sort of individual. But there is this whole psychological aspect of Venom, the fact that the symbiote suit makes you very aggressive. It brings out the worst in people, so to speak. I think that'd be an interesting thing. Do you have a take on my Sam Esmail written, Alfonso Cuarón directed?
Sam Esmail hasn't proven anything to me when it comes to movies. I haven't
seen what the movie he directed.
Did he direct a movie?
Didn't he do a movie before Mr. Robot?
I don't know.
I thought he did one.
Maybe he did. I didn't see it.
I thought we've talked about this before.
Maybe we have. I don't know.
Do you have CTE? What's wrong with you?
You know who my choice of director would be for this?
Who?
Neill Blomkamp.
That's a great pick.
And it
doesn't have robots in it.
We have an inside joke where that was the Schmoes wanted Neill Blomkamp to direct everything at a time.
It's not an inside joke. It's legitimate.
It's
At one point, Christian Harloff said that was his number one pick to direct him. I mean, I just want Sharlto Copley in this film.
Bring
me Sharlto Copley.
Sharlto Copley as Carnage.
That's a good pick. That's a really, really good pick. Kind of funny, kind of creepy. Yeah. Hell, he could play both of them.
Who else is it going to be? Jim Carrey?
That was, yeah. No.
You're liking my pick. Neill Blomkamp directing Tom Hardy as Venom.
Sharlto Copley.
And Sharlto Copley as Carnage.
Who's going to be anti-Venom?
Chappie.
The guy from the Antwoord guy?
Keira Knightley.
Is anti-Venom a girl?
No.
Okay.
But neither is Cable.
Where did that come from?
Deadpool. When he says Keira Knightley better be Cable at the end of Deadpool.
Oh, okay. Anyways, yeah. Hope for the best.
Written by Drew Goddard.
Bad Robot? Is he a Bad Robot kid?
He has worked with Bad Robot, yes.
Okay. It's hard. It's hard for me these days. You know who else would be good for this? Peter Berg would be great for a Venom film. Not really. You know who we could have starring in it as Eddie Brock?
Michael B. Jordan.
No, that's a good pick. There's only one choice.
Jason Street?
No. Come on.
Give me a minute.
Think harder.
Taylor Kitsch?
No, think outside of. There's more than just Friday Night Lights.
Justin Theroux?
It's a good one. Keep going. Who
Justin Theroux is not a good one for Eddie Brock.
Who has he absolutely loved working with last year? Who did he?
Mark Wahlberg?
Mark Wahlberg.
You want Mark Wahlberg as Eddie Brock?
A younger Mark Wahlberg, like Boogie Nights era Mark Wahlberg would have been a great. No, he wouldn't. Mark Wahlberg is not a good actor.
Yeah, he is.
I don't think so.
He's an Oscar-winning actor.
Well, that's fine.
Hey, how's it going?
Stop. All right.
I wish your dog would quit staring at me.
We've tried to make the most of this nothing movie statement.
He loves my Neill Blomkamp take.
All right. When we come back after this break.
Hold on. Let me do a Twitter poll. Who would you prefer direct Venom?
Neill Blomkamp or?
And we will put, we'll put the director. Who would you prefer? Let's do it this way. Who would you prefer direct Venom? And then I'll put Ruben Fleischer, Alfonso Cuarón, and Neill Blomkamp.
I'm going to go on a little bit of a Neill Blomkamp rant right now. New podcast, Neill Blomkamp rant.
Tricked by trailers. Neill Blomkamp rant. Can we please start that podcast?
So there's nothing wrong with Neill Blomkamp. He's made 3 films. You could argue that they've progressively gotten worse. I haven't seen Chappie. I know what people say about Chappie. And you could also make the argument that they're all 3 essentially the same movies. They're kind of cousins of one another. And District 9 is a fucking great film. I think that's a universally sort of agreed upon statement. I think that second movie did, what's it called?
Elysium.
That's a pretty good movie. I don't have a problem with that.
Good.
I know that there was like some, whitewashing of that. Yeah. Okay. It's still a pretty good film. He made one bad movie. You know who else makes bad movies sometimes? Every other
Ridley
director.
Scott.
Yeah. I mean, Steven Spielberg made that shit show, the BFG, that you don't
movie
like.
blows ass.
So we have very short memories. At one point, Christian Harloff thought that he should direct Star Wars. I'd love to see a Neill Blomkamp Star Wars movie.
Chappie, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I'm not a fan of it, but I don't think it's a bad movie. I think people exaggerate how bad it is. I do think the trajectory is downward from movie to movie. I think they do get worse and worse, but I'm not going as far as to say that Chappie is
I'm
bad
glad
movie.
He didn't do an Alien movie, because
I don't agree. After seeing Alien Covenant,
would have been cool.
I would have preferred either a straight up Prometheus sequel, which we didn't really get. We did. It was Alien Covenant is mostly Prometheus 2.
I know everything that I went ahead and spoiled that entire movie for myself.
So did the trailers. I went back and watched the trailers after seeing the movie. Anyway, there's a lot of Prometheus 2 elements in it, but I wish that they branded it instead of calling it Alien Covenant, instead of treating it such a bridge between the two franchises, or whatever you want to call them, between 2 movies. I would have preferred either a straight up Prometheus sequel or Neill Blomkamp's Alien 5 to what we got with Alien Covenant. I really wish he had that project.
Yeah. I don't really have a take on it.
Okay.
All right. We'll be right back. We're going to talk about Linkin Park.
Did you know that Sight and Sound has a YouTube channel? If you didn't, you need to go and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Sight and Sound, or you can find a link in the description of this podcast. But yeah, if you're wanting more Sight and Sound content, you can get a ton of it over on our YouTube page. There's a lot more content over there. I do music reviews. Ryan talks about movies. We talk about TV, obviously. And yeah, it's kind of a nice little place to go if you need some more Sight and Sound in your life.
Last time we talked about Linkin Park, it was a part of a 3-hour conversation. And we're not going to do that here. I promise you. We're going to talk about this new album, One More Light, by a band that I think not only means a lot to you and I in our music enjoyment, the type of music that we like, but also just in music in general. I would go so far to say that I'm not like a diehard Linkin Park fan. I haven't been following their career for a really, really long time. Like a lot of people, Linkin Park came into my life with Hybrid Theory, and they left a mark because they put out 3 really, really great albums, their first 3 albums. But you have a more storied history with them. Just to sort of catch us up to speed, remind us of the role that Linkin Park kind of played in your life.
Well, in the way that Lost got me into television, Linkin Park got me into music. It got me into rock. They basically formed my entire middle school, like my adolescent youth. I mean, it was centered around Linkin Park and that entire world that they sort of allowed me to expand on, that type of music. They're the reason why I became a musician. As a kid, I thought I was going to be a rapper like Mike Shinoda, and then I realized that I don't have any vocal ability, so I'm going to scream. But it was all because of Linkin Park. I held those two first albums in very high regard. They were like gospel to me. Even Reanimation at the time, that was like one of my favorite projects. Mike Shinoda was my hero. Loved even what he did with Fort Minor. And then Minutes to Midnight was sort of the betrayal. That was sort of the album at the time.
A sound shift, so to speak.
Yeah. And at the time, I mean, I was young when that came out, and so I didn't really understand why they were changing. I didn't like it. I remember listening to a few songs, of course, Shadow of the Day, and what was that other one that really crept into the mainstream?
Off of Meteora? Or no, off of that album?
Minutes to Midnight.
2 Minutes to Midnight. Well, I mean, they had a bunch. They had What I've Done was their
What
lead
I've
single.
Done, yes, the Linkin Park song.
Yeah.
So all of that just kind of felt
Bleed
like
it out, leave out all the rest.
Yeah, it just kind of felt like a betrayal, and that was when I got off of Linkin Park. I didn't hop back on until Living Things came out because I thought that sounded more like the album that I wanted after Meteora if they were going to do any type of transition.
A little bit more reminiscent of that older sound.
And yeah, man. But basically, ever since Minutes to Midnight, they've sort of been this like just distant cousin. Like I remember growing up with them, and we played together and had all these good times and memories. But you grow older, and you realize we grow apart, and you're not sure if you like what they've become.
They get into weird things and try to have conversations about their new hobbies, and you just have.
And I'm just like, okay, I'm just like shaking my head, like
they want to talk to you about podcasting, and you don't even know what podcasts are.
That's how my relationship is with Linkin Park.
It's man, we talked too about bands changing over time, that we expect that it's natural for anybody that creates art to progress and change over time, but sometimes that change can be a risk, and there's a reason why we call it a risk, because you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it.
Linkin Park didn't change the way Foo Fighters has changed.
Yeah, like, Foo Fighters has been like a band like Foo Fighters reminds me of, and this is going to be weird to say, but they remind me of a band like Architects. They change from album to album, but they're always playing in the same sandbox.
They're to the brand that they started with, essentially.
But you can appreciate when a band changes drastically and they pull it off. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Childish Gambino, we had this conversation earlier this year, well, late last year, about that change. You didn't really take to it as well. You didn't think it was necessarily bad, it just wasn't for you.
Right.
Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Sort of leading into this, the talk, we've sort of, when we talked about Linkin Park some months ago on that episode, we had that conversation because of the announcement of this album, because they had released this single, Heavy. It's documented our thoughts on it. That song grew on you a little bit. That's sort of your updated opinion. You sort of enjoyed that song.
I do. Yeah, it's a good song.
And I wasn't super high on it. I think one of the other singles, Battle Symphony, that came out, I actually thought it was pretty good. But if you go back and listen to Sight and Sound Music over the last few months, I've sort of documented all of the singles that have come out. I think there's been 4 off of this album. And I just wasn't into it. I wasn't interested in it. This wasn't the Linkin Park. It wasn't that I thought the songs were terrible. It was just, it wasn't what I wanted Linkin Park to do.
My abbreviated take on Heavy is that it's a good song. I enjoy listening to it. I hated that Linkin Park was the band who took the time to write it.
Right.
That's sort of I would rather Linkin Park do something else other than write a song like Heavy. But.
Well, and I mean, leading up to this as well, this has been very documented lately. Chester Bennington sort of lashing out against people for good reason. For good reason. A lot of people are constantly asking him about this change in sound. I mean, directly in interviews. Are you afraid fans aren't going to receive this very well? Why the change in style?
I think
asking him about
headline,
hybrid theory.
Yeah, I was gonna say the headline was Chester Bennington wants you to stop effing asking him about hybrid theory.
Yeah, and to move on from hybrid theory.
Yes.
What's your take on that?
I understand
him saying that.
again, going back to the transition, I mean, I guess as a fan, maybe it's wrong of me to expect a more consistent change, like we said with Foo Fighters. But part of me just has a hard time, and I'm not calling him fake. I'm not calling him a liar. Just how I knew Linkin Park growing up, how I thought Chester was, how I thought Mike was. Part of me just isn't convinced that they actually want to do this. You know what I mean? Like I guess it's hard for me to imagine that Chester Bennington listens to one of the songs on that album. It's like, yeah, that's what I want to be doing. It's weird.
I sort of take the same approach. I don't remember what director it was. There was a director recently that was known for making, I guess really intense movies or whatnot. But at one point, I don't remember what film it was, but he said, I want to make a movie that my kids can go see. And it might have even been as recent as Guy Ritchie on Joe Rogan talking about his decision to do Aladdin.
This sounds familiar. It might have been Guy Ritchie.
Yeah. Just the fact that, he's tired of doing movies that are about mob bosses in England and stuff like that he wants to make something for his kids to watch. I can't remember who talked about it. But regardless, I mean, it might have even been J.J. Abrams talking about Super 8 at one point. I don't know.
No.
Regardless, but I feel like that's sort of the take on it. Like, they want to potentially make something that's more palatable for people. But regardless, let's talk about this album. It's out now. I mean, I want you to sort of give your full review on it, but the critics they've had their say. The album has pretty much been panned. People not really receiving this very well, this sort of transition that they're exploring, this stylistic approach. Ryan Snelling, you're the guy with the spotlight on him right now because you hold this band in so much high regard. What did you take away from this album?
My first takeaway is something that you've actually hinted at since we first heard Heavy and we've heard more of the other albums. The one thing I don't like on this album is Chester.
Yeah.
Pretty much across the board.
I had said...
Except Heavy.
I had said in one of the songs that he ruined one of the song was perfectly fine, but he actually ruined the song for me.
I like the song Heavy. I enjoy it, but when I was hearing the rest of the album, I thought, I think I might like Heavy more if it's Mike Shinoda on it.
Yeah.
Instead of, because he had that song like Where'd You Go? He had a nice vibe with Holly. I can't remember who the guest vocalist was on that. But I imagine what Heavy might be like if Mike did it. And I was like, I might even think this is better.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a couple other songs that I just didn't care for. And to sum it up, you're talking to a huge Linkin Park fan. To sum it up, I don't want to hear Chester Bennington sing lines like "Turn Up That Bass" in a Linkin Park pop album.
One of the worst moments on the entire album.
I do not want to hear him sing that line.
Yeah.
And that pretty much sums up my entire thoughts on that.
Okay.
It really does.
What about the stylistic approach? I think, and I'll get into what I think about it, and I'll have my full review as well, but if you actually texted me the morning this came out and asked me how it was, and I said that there is not 1 ounce of rock on this whole thing. And I actually watched a review of somebody talking about this album saying, absolutely, they definitely brought the rock element. In the third track of the album, there's guitar. Motherfucker, just because there's guitar in a song doesn't mean it's rock. There is no rock to be found on this album.
You can have guitar in a Drake song.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also talked about it off air too. There is only 1 song on the entire album that features Mike Shinoda rapping in it. I actually thought his verse on the song was great. I thought it was a great verse, but it did kind of bum me out, the fact that he really didn't bring that aspect to it. I sort of categorize this to somebody else as Linkin Park doing their best Chainsmokers impression. I mean, the very pop, EDM, dance music, electronic music version of what pop music is. How do you feel about them taking that specific approach? Because this is a pop album.
It is a pop
100%
album.
a pop album.
Again, I'm just not convinced that like in their heart of hearts, this is what they imagine themselves doing. You know what I mean? Like, I know that they want to keep it fresh. I know that again, this might sound like I'm calling them out for being a liar. And I'm not saying that. It's just, it's so hard for me to grasp that when they release something like this, like, they're really happy with the result. Because part of them has to think, well, maybe we can go back and do something else. I mean, they are rock musicians. It just, the evolution of music makes sense to me, but this result does not make sense to me. They've made better pop songs on other albums, so they can still bring. Why couldn't they bring some of that old flavor in?
Yeah,
and make a Linkin Park pop album. This doesn't sound like a Linkin Park pop album.
Yeah, we talked about this on our thing, that we would like to see them bring that Linkin Park element that we know to pop music. This sort of does sound to me like copycat of what already exists out in the world. There's a question I do need to ask you, sort of taking the critical aspect of everything aside and breaking it down under a microscope. Did you enjoy listening to this album?
No.
You didn't enjoy
it?
Because
the only saving grace for me would have been if Mike had done more. I mean, I like the stuff that he does when he sings.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that rap verse, but I thought he was sorely missed on this album.
Right. So from my perspective, a critical perspective, this album really doesn't have much. It's pretty, from a critical perspective, it's terrible. It's pretty terrible. But with that being said, I say it all the time. If a song is good, it's good. And yesterday, I mowed my yard. I was mowing my yard, and I was listening to this because I wanted to listen to it so we could talk about it. And I loved every second of this album. From front to back, I had such a fantastic time listening to this while I was mowing my yard. In fact, I would go so far to say that for what this album is, for what they were trying to do, I actually think it's spectacular.
I actually think a word for it is lame. You know how we talked about how it's weird for a band like Blink-182 to make pop punk songs
brought them up.
About partying and stuff, and it's weird and it's kind of lame in that regard. I just think it's lame for these older men to make this type of pop album.
I think without
cheese, a little bit of cheese in there,
100%,
a little bit of cheese.
When you listen to Drake, you know exactly what you're getting into. You're not getting into Drake to change your opinion on music. You're not looking for a deeper life experience. You're going into it just to have a good time. And to me, that's what this album was. This is a turn your brain off and do something else album and have a great time. Anybody, including you, that has listened to this and has not enjoyed it, I am going to tell you right now the exact thing that you need to do in order to fall in love with this album.
Keep listening.
No. Go to a swimming pool. Go to a beach if you live around a beach. Go do something outside and have this on in the background. There is no better album to put on. This is a fun summer album. Roll your windows down and just listen to it. That's what it is. Turn your brain off. This is the Fast and the Furious. This is
the Transformers.
The Transformers, the Michael Bay.
Let's use Transformers because they're the Transformers band.
Dumb, stupid, turn your brain off music, man. And that's what it is. And it is impossible. It is after listening to it, mowing my yard, I couldn't get these songs out of my head. They were stuck in my head.
How?
I don't know.
I think the one song that I liked, I think, was the Sorry song. Sorry for Now or something like that. That's the one that has the pump bass up.
Quality-wise, it's not good. It's cheesy as hell. There are so many eye roll moments when I put on my critical hat. But if a song is good, it's good. And it was catchy to me. And I had a lot of fun listening to it, not giving a shit about anything. And man, if I enjoy listening to it, I don't know what I'm supposed to say.
You can follow the Twitter poll at SightSoundPod. Should Linkin Park ever have a lyric that says "pump the bass up"?
Yeah. And it's funny too, because we talk about context. We talk about these songs in the context of their album. When Heavy comes on, I've done a complete 180.
It's a good song.
I fucking love it. I thought it was great.
It's a good song
on this album. And that's all I'm saying.
Some great lyrics in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Do I want Linkin Park to make this album? Not really. I don't. But if I'm going out there to listen to a band write good songs, and let's just throw that out there right now. Linkin Park, great songwriters.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, except for the last album.
Well, yeah. But just in general, they have a track record of writing really, really good songs. If I want to hear a pop album that's paint by numbers, has no substance to it, not that this doesn't have substance to it, because actually lyrically, I think they talk about having to be on tour, away from your family, some substance abuse stuff on this album. Then if I'm going to listen to Selena Gomez do a pop album, I would at least want it to be written by people who have a track record of writing good songs. And you brought up Blink 182. Why is it okay for them to put out an album? There's not much different from this album to the last Blink 182 album that came out. Those are just dumb, fun pop punk songs. They write songs about having dogs lick your balls and stuff like that.
Well, I think
what's different,
because Blink 182,
it does have more of a rock vibe.
Blink 182 is kind of staying true to what they're doing,
okay,
while keeping it fresh. I really like that California album,
yeah,
because it has to do with California. The thing about Linkin Park, I think the problem with Linkin Park is that there's no natural progression. Think
true.
about what Hunting Party was. It's completely black
Trash.
and white when you compare Hunting Party to this song.
I listened to that album yesterday.
It's awful.
Carl and I, the production on it alone, that's what, walking away from that album, I had that same thing of how can you walk away from this and think that it's good?
Yes. So I think that's where the problem is, because there's no natural progression, because it almost feels like to me, and maybe it's my impression of it, that every time they put out a new sound and people dislike it, they just say, well, that didn't work. Let's try something completely different. That's what it feels like to me, that they're just juggling and scrambling. It feels like they're scrambling, even though they'll talk about how much, like, they'll defend themselves saying it's natural for us to want to change. Yeah, but you're also, it doesn't feel like it's a true rock musician mentality to me.
Yeah, and it's not. It's definitely not. But in the greater scheme of things, I don't know what that really matters, especially because I think, and I'm going to put my Nostradamus hat on here, I think you're going to hear these songs a lot in the next year or so, because they hit the mark. They tick every single box of radio pop hit, radio pop hit, radio pop hit, and they are catchy songs. These are songs that could easily be picked up by any TV show, a CW type of show, a commercial.
I think where it matters is, like, I remember when I was a musician, when I was writing songs, all of my previous work informed my newer stuff, and we got better and better at it. Hunting Party, how do you take what worked and didn't work on Hunting Party and apply it to an album like One More Light when there's no correlation whatsoever?
Well, we're having two different conversations, because you're still speaking from a critical perspective, which is fine. I'm talking about pop radio hits.
I mean,
when we go shop for your joggers and H&M, this songs from this album are going to be on the radio.
Yeah, I get that. Absolutely. I mean, they've had songs on the radio for years.
You're going to be singing this. I think by the end of the year, you're going to enjoy this album. That's
fine. I would like to.
Yeah.
I would like to appreciate it.
But yeah, you're right. The overlying shadow, the looming shadow here is this the album we want Linkin Park to make? No, it's not. But that's okay, because we've already got that with Bring Me the Horizons. Yeah, I mean, that album that came out last year, that seems to me, that's what Linkin Park fans want. And that's fine, because it's being made by younger people that are a little bit more attuned with modern music trends. which is another podcast we're going to start.
You know what else? The thing we've talked about, or you've talked about, rock dying. How great would it be if Linkin Park brought it back by going back?
Don't want it.
You don't want them to bring rock back.
No, I don't want to see
them, and Bring Me the Horizon could flourish in an even more mainstream way.
Bring Me the Horizon's already flourishing.
Not in a mainstream way.
Oh yeah, they're doing pretty well for themselves. I mean,
I'm not saying they don't do well.
Is
for
it is it breaking
They
the
still-
barrier that some other big bands have done?
That's what
No,
I'm-
it's not.
That's what I'm saying.
But that's the rock landscape in general. That the whole landscape is not doing its job to break.
I'm putting this entirely on Linkin Park. They owe us they have a responsibility to bring rock back.
I mean, look at, again, we talk about Blink-182. They put out an album last year. Didn't really move the needle in terms of crossover appeal. I guarantee you there were not a whole new wave and drove of Blink-182 fans that came, or new Blink-182 fans that came on board with that album. All of those things is a much bigger idea and a bigger picture. You have to have a wave of rock music happening in order for that to happen. Do you remember when Green Day sort of had this resurgence with American Idiot?
Yeah.
At that time, rock music was flourishing.
The album was good when it came out.
It was
I enjoyed that album.
Yeah, but they had
as a youth.
They had that whole wave of pop punk that was already happening. All the emo movement that was going on, screamo music, metalcore, and then you have a band like Green Day pop up with this great album, and so many new people got onto that. You know how many fucking Hot Topics shirts they sold of Green Day? My God,
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. I mean that idea just doesn't exist right now. No matter what Luke Jagger says,
I was just about
rock
to say, I
music-
can't wait to hear how pissed he is at
rock
this conversation.
music is irrelevant right now. It just is. We need that Nirvana type of band though to break through, and I don't know who that is.
Balance of composure.
It could have been Balance of Composure. No, they have too many albums out right now. You need that one. It has to be the perfect recipe: the song, the attitude, the style, and it also has to be like a breakout moment. I mean, Smells Like Teen Spirit came out after they had already had one album, but it was a thing that people flocked to. Like, check out this new band.
Right.
People don't want to say check out this new band who has 4 albums out. They don't want to say that. Everybody wants to find out about them together. It's one of the reasons why Fall Out Boy was so big.
Yeah.
When they came out, but I don't know. You can hear me having conversations like this by myself on Sight and Sound Music. Big shout out to Brad Bell's significant other, whatever your name is.
One thing that I was going to mention at the top of the show, I totally forgot. I know you hate this, Jay, but we're doing another giveaway.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to put it up.
I also hate plugging things at the end of the show, which is on me because I could have brought up that we have T-shirts for sale on Sight and Sound. Or
Are you going to let me
sightsoundpod.com.
finish my plug before you
I
talk
don't
about
want to do a
t-shirts?
giveaway.
Jesus, I don't care.
You're giving away something you got for free.
Yeah, because people will enjoy it.
Maybe other people got the same thing you got.
Then they won't enter the giveaway. I want to give something away to someone who will enjoy it because I won't. I have no use for the Alien Covenant poster. Anyway, we're doing a giveaway. Win an Alien Covenant poster. It's the one with the egg and it says hide on it. I will post pictures of it. I'll be giving it away. All you have to do is follow us on Instagram. We're trying to step up our Instagram game. Just so follow us at Sight Sound Pod, and I will pick an Instagram follower. Let's hold it up for a week. I'll announce it on next week's Sight and Sound Weekly. Who wins that?
Here's how we should do this, though. We can't just throw it out to any Instagram follower because there's a bunch and they might not hear this. So if you pick...
Do you want them to post about us?
Rob Flannery. No, they don't have to post about us. What we'll do, let's make a post on our Instagram and you have to follow us and then comment on the picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Follow Sight Sound Pod on
you-
Instagram.
And you have to tag one of your friends.
This is too much.
I've done this before. I've entered contests like this before. Have you ever entered a contest on Instagram?
No?
This is how it's typically done.
Okay, let's do that then. We'll try it out. If not, I'm just going to have to pick somebody that didn't tag their friend. But I'm going to post a picture on Instagram and Twitter. Follow the Instagram account. Comment on the picture on Instagram. Tagging your friend to do the same thing. And I will pick a winner next week. This could be embarrassing. What if nobody does it?
Well, we have to do it a ways out because we have to plug it on all 300 of our shows that we do. We have to plug it on Leftovers. We have to plug it on After Schmo that we're giving away an Alien poster if you want it.
Well, we will have done that by the time we get to the next Sight and Sound Weekly.
There you go.
Okay, T-shirts. We just put up our Leftovers themed T-shirt, which is fantastic. You can check out. I'm actually wearing one of our T-shirts right now. I've worn half of them. The white shirt, I did the flower shirt in the white. It is so transparent that you can just see my back hair.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's why I don't wear white shirts. In general, it's soft. They're a lot softer than I thought.
I might give that away.
It's the first white T-shirt I've bought in probably a decade.
I might give away the Sight and Sound flower shirt maybe once it's expired. I've got a medium I could give away.
Drop a little knowledge on you.
It's sticking around.
We will. No, it's not. We will re-release that shirt in different colors much later, in a heather gray or a black.
Okay.
Right.
I hope my Leftover shirt comes in tomorrow, which will be heather gray. I'm excited to see what that looks like.
Me too. Let me know. Let me know how that goes.
Good.
Where can they find you online?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at WhatUpSnell. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's sort of the main hub for all of our content. Every single podcast that we do shows up there, but also our video content. Jay just put up his review of Harry Styles' self-titled album, which is still incredible. So definitely go and check that out. Jaye Williams.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jaye Williams, J to the A to the Y to the E. It's the same for both. Also on Sight and Sound Music every single Friday. Tune in. Got some other things cooking in the kitchen.
Tricked by Trailers podcast.
Tricked by Trailers, new podcast we're going to be developing. Also have a new show I'm working on with my mother that I'm not going to tell Ryan anything about because I'm afraid he's going to take it.
Let's update the Twitter poll real quick. Did you guys enjoy the first Star Trek Discovery trailer? 67% said no. Will you subscribe to CBS All Access just to watch Star Trek Discovery? 100% said no. Is anyone else annoyed with Tom Hardy's grunting and totally being inaudible? 64% said, I hear him just fine. Wow, okay. Who would you prefer direct the Venom movie? Ruben Fleischer is at 9%. The other two are tied at 45%.
What were the other options?
Alfonso Cuarón and Neill Blomkamp.
Oh.
Should Linkin Park ever have a lyric that says, pump the bass up? 83% said, no, they're losing it. And that's it for
How
this.
dare you?
That's it for the Twitter poll.
Linkin Park should be ashamed of themselves.
I agree.
All right, let's get out of here.
See you guys.